Bravo. Woo.
If you want, wait a sec. I think we're going to, if anybody has any questions for Mr. Spenser, this is the time to get some clarity. Anybody want to ask us something specific about El Quds, about, oh, we got it right over here. Yes, madam, come up here so we can hear you.
I was just speaking with a lady, and she said that a good majority of Jewish people are aligned with, as I call, the regressive left. Do you find that the case, and why aren't there more people here today? And what can we do about it?
Yes, of course it's the case. We all know that there are tremendous numbers of Jews who are allied with the left, with the jihad force, and this is because I would venture to say this is because the forces of the Palestinian Jihad have so very skillfully portrayed themselves as the victims of race discrimination and imperialism. And of course the left, Jews and non-Jews on the left, that's just a siren song as far as they're concerned, and they fall for it immediately. But this has nothing to do with either race hatred or imperialism. As a matter of fact, the Muslim conquests in the 7th century of the entirety of the Middle East and North Africa, Persia, and parts of India, that's the largest and most successful imperialistic adventure in history, completely annihilating the native cultures of the area and replacing them by force with a culture that has led directly to us being here today. The idea that this has something to do with race also is belied by the fact that there are Israeli Arabs who are in the Knesset, who are citizens of Israel. You can't say that about Jews anywhere in the Middle East. Remember that there's a lot of talk about expulsion and refugees, and everybody has forgotten that there were 900,000 Jews who were expelled from Muslim countries after the creation of the State of Israel. They have no right of return, and they have no representation in their native countries whatsoever. And they were expelled on the basis of deeply rooted edicts within the Quran, the holy book of Islam, that calls the Jews the worst enemies of the Muslims, and says that humiliation and disgrace have to follow them wherever they are found. And thus, because the Muslims in the Quran are those who are the executors of the wrath of Allah, those who carry out His punishments, it is the responsibility of Muslims to make sure that the Jews are humiliated and disgraced. Now, of course, none of this is known to Jews on the left who are in support of the Palestinians or who are pressuring the State of Israel to make yet more concessions. None of this is known because the ideological roots of this problem and the reason why none of the peace settlements ever work, this has been completely obscured. And the language of this imperialism and racism has been put forward. And this here again, we have to keep standing and telling the truth. And I am confident that the more things advance, and even as the worse they get, the easier it will be to stand for the truth. Because after all, how can anybody celebrate a group where you have this 13-year-old girl murdered in her bed, and then the murderer is celebrated as a hero? Now, I hope that nothing like that ever happens again, but I am confident that, unfortunately, as it does happen, it will lead to more and more people realizing exactly what they're dealing with. And I think they will lose a lot of support. Stuart.
How has Brexit affected our cause, or will it? And what's your take on Michael Gove?
How has Brexit affected our cause, or will it? How has Brexit affected our cause is extraordinary, because what we have is state power and the power of the mainstream media being used to put forward these lies that I spoke about. And so we're constantly barraged with them. But Brexit was, against all expectations, the first indication that the majority of the people in the UK, and by extension in Western Europe, in Canada, and in the United States, are fed up and are realizing that they're being lied to. And so it's a tremendous source of hope. even if the British government finds some way to stay in the European Union, and I wouldn't be in the least surprised if they circumvent the will of the people in that regard, the fact that the vote went the way it did is not going to go away. And those people are going to be heard from again. It's a tremendous indication that there is hope for the future, and that the hegemony of the elites, the political and media elites, is weakening and can be broken. And I think it's weakening just because of what I've been saying here. It's weakening under the force of reality. I mean, they keep telling us that Islamic Jihad terror has nothing to do with Islam, and it's such an obvious lie. People realize it, even if they've never opened a Quran and have no idea what Muhammad said or did. People know that these guys screaming Allahu Akbar and saying they did it because of Allah, that they do have something to do with Islam. And so the elites are in more and more of an absurd position as they try to prop up their lies. And that's all to the good. They're not going to be able to sustain this forever. What was the second one? I'm sorry.
Michael Gove.
Michael Gove. I don't know what the situation is. Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to say a couple of things here. I'm pretty active in the Bonn area, and it's a predominantly Jewish area. Well, we have a strong representation. Just want to tell everybody, thank you very much for organizing this on behalf of the JDL as well as the other organizations. But what really matters is take a pen, take a piece of paper, and write to your politicians, and write to your people who have some influence as far as the media is concerned, because that is where their influence really lies. It's in the ability to go out and to share that. I see a sign saying, "I'm gay. Orlando, will you murder me?" Yes, they will. Okay, sorry to tell you, they will. If you have... we have company, I think. I will turn the mic over back to... who is that?
Yeah, I told you they're coming. I'm going to see if we can, we have another speaker here, so before we get too drowned out, come up here, Raza. I want you to meet this young lady. I'm sure many of you have heard of her.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Raheel Raza. I'm president of the Council for Muslims Facing Tomorrow. I'm both delighted and saddened to be here. I'm delighted because I'm part of a community that believes in life and living and respect for everyone else and support. I'm saddened because I am a practicing Muslim. This is the holy month of Ramadan, and this is the month in my entire life I have never seen so much blood shed in the name of my faith. And it's something that is very difficult to deal with, and it's something that is very sad. I came here today because I want to show my support for all of you. I'm a great lover of Israel. I will be going there for the 10th time this year. But I also came because I wanted to ask the other side a question. Are you going to commemorate the life of a 13-year-old who was brutally murdered in her bed? That's all I want to ask them. The rest of it is politics, but are you going to show the humanity to commemorate and speak about the life of a 13-year-old girl murdered in her bed? And that is something they will not have an answer for, because they believe in hate and I believe in love. So thank you all, and may you go in peace.
So wait, Raza, wait, don't go away. I'm sure we got some good questions for you, that's for sure. I mean, my question is, does the Quran condone violence and killing or not? Like, according to Mark, no question. Mr. Spenser says it's right there, it's in the book. I hear all these guys on the radio and on TV saying there's no way. The Quran does not deal with any kind of death or persecution of other religions and other faiths and other cultures. So, you're a Muslim, what's the truth?
Well, the wonderful thing about being a Canadian is that we can agree to disagree. And while Mr. Spenser is right, I also believe that there is something there that is worth a discussion. If the Quran asked 1.6 billion Muslims to kill people, none of us, you would be here today. So that is the reality. The reality also is that the Quran is the youngest of the monotheistic faiths. It is very connected to Judaism and Christianity in many ways. It speaks about humanity, but it has the tendency and the opportunity to be misconstrued, to be misinterpreted and misunderstood. What the extremists do is they read and understand it in a different way than I do. I read the Quran every morning. I don't go out and kill people. So it has something to do with how it's interpreted, and unfortunately, our religious leaders are promoting the violent aspects of the faith. They are taking lines out of context. They are using the Middle East crisis as, their advantage to promote political Islam. But the spiritual message of Islam is one of peace and pluralism, a very difficult thing to speak about standing here when we are seeing so many murders. But, deep down, I know that there is opportunity for peace if we only were able to understand what it means.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Any other questions for Raza or for Mr. Spenser at this time before the music starts blaring? Okay, we got this young lady back here again. Yes. Okay.
I have some Muslim friends, good friends in Calgary, and I had a discussion with her, and she basically said that she does not believe in the hadiths, and she only practices the beginning part of Muhammad's quest in Mecca. Is that where you're deriving your spirituality from, and forgetting the hadiths, forgetting about the part of the Quran and the hadiths and the surah that took place in Medina?
I do not practice hadith and believe in it because a lot of it, most of it is man-made. It was put together 100 and 200 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. Yes, I do follow the Quran. It's very difficult to say that you can't, you can put aside because it's there. It's a scripture, it's there, it's written in the book. Now, it's open to people to read it and misinterpret it anytime they want. But we have to understand that the larger message of the Quran is one of compassion and mercy. God is looked upon as compassionate and merciful, and we're very clearly told that if you don't practice the same compassion and mercy, then don't call yourself a Muslim or a human being. So there's no gray area there. It's just that it's very easy to misinterpret. And yes, I derive my spirituality from the fact that we have a humanity that connects us. I look upon religion through the lens of human rights and not the other way around. And when we uphold human rights and respect each other's humanity, then it doesn't matter where we come from or what color we are from. We need to learn to respect and love each other. And that's the important thing.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Well, I wish there were more people like you around. That's all I can say. Thank you. I was going to get Mr. Spenser. Wait, Mr. Spenser, where are you going? I can't. Anybody interested in American politics here? Yeah. So I just wanted to get your little bit of take, especially with the exit of of Britain. With people are kind of drawing this comparison with Trump, and you already alluded to it with the connection of people's discontentment. But where do you see? Even a lot of Republicans are getting nervous about Trump at times. Where do you see this thing going? You're, as a prophet, I'm asking you to make some comments now, because you've been pretty accurate with your predictions of what's going on over the since I started following you probably 5-6 years ago. So, I'd love you to kind of address some of the American political issues. And Hillary Clinton, is she really a friend or foe? Is the Democrats going to get 70% of the Jewish vote again in the U.S.? So many troubling issues I have with what's going on down there.
Well, there's every reason to be troubled. It's crazy. But Hillary Clinton, I don't think, Barack Obama in 2012, he got 78% of the Jewish vote in 2008. And then in 12, he got 63%. And I think Hillary will get even less. Yes. Because Hillary is an old friend of, there's that famous picture of her with Arafat and his wife, and it's clear now after 7.5 years of Obama what the Democratic Party is really all about when it comes to Israel. And so I think that Trump will do better, although he has not been so great himself. One magnificent thing that he did just today was to say that the Palestinian leadership has to end the hatred and incitement. that led to the killing of Halal Ariel. Now that's an astonishing statement. I mean, it's just common sense, but if you think about it, when was the last time you heard an American political leader call the Palestinians out on anything? And so he's way ahead in that regard. And so that's one of the reasons why he is so appealing to so many people. He is obviously just an ordinary person. I mean, he's fantastically rich, of course, but he's not a packaged, processed, focus grouped politician who is saying what he thinks people want to hear in a way that will be acceptable to the mainstream media and so on. He doesn't care about any of that, and he just says what he thinks. And this is remarkable nowadays and very unusual, and one of the main reasons why he is so popular. He is kind of America's Brexit in that regard, that he is a strike against the political and the media elites. Now, will he win is another thing. I really don't want to predict, but right now it doesn't look so good, and it doesn't look so good because the Republican establishment is so against him that they seem to be following through on really trying to split the opposition to Hillary, which will just elect her. And of course, the Republican establishment for years, if you follow this kind of thing, has been just a sort of an adjunct to the Democratic Party establishment, and now they see their mutual hegemony threatened by Trump, and so they're banding together. And it's kind of like in a different way what happened in Sweden. In Sweden, there is a group called the Sweden Democrats that is against the inundation of Muslim migrants into Sweden and the transformation of Swedish society by them to adhere to the norms of Islamic law and so on, the increasing crime and violence in Sweden that's come with this. And they won 16% of the vote last time, which is a considerable amount in a country where there are dozens of political parties. And so the rest of the political parties all got together and agreed never to work with the Sweden Democrats, which was great for the Sweden Democrats because now they're really the only opposition party in Sweden. And I think the same kind of thing is happening now in America, that Trump is the only opposition to the elite hegemony, and the elites, Republican and Democrat, are banding together against him. So whether they're not or not they pull it off and defeat him in November, the movement that he has begun, perhaps unwittingly, is not going to go away. And the fact, I think also one of the main things about his appeal is that he insists that the threat be called Islamic terrorism. And there's been a lot of discussion about that, with the president derisively saying, what difference does it make what we call it? We know who we're fighting. Well, actually, it makes a tremendous difference, because you cannot defeat an enemy you do not understand. Right now, it's official U.S. government policy never to mention Islam or jihad in connection with terrorism. What that means is that they cannot study the motives and the goals of the enemy. They cannot understand. As a matter of policy, they're bound not to understand who these people are, what they're trying to do, and how they intend to go about it. That's just a recipe for defeat. You have to understand from the teachings of the Quran that mandate violence against unbelievers. Excuse me, I'm ringing. You have to understand from the teachings of the Quran, the holy book of Islam, from the example of Muhammad, who fought 78 battles and 77 were offensive, and who called for the assassination of his enemies, and who told his followers to wage war against and to subjugate the unbelievers. You have to understand from these sources what the beliefs of the jihadis are, and only then can you begin to formulate policies that will genuinely effectively counter them. But instead, we're just caught in this politically correct pretending, well, this is not really Islam, it has nothing to do with Islam, and so on. And so Trump is challenging that, and that's all to the good. These things that he has unleashed, these things that he has brought into the public discourse that were never allowed to be discussed before, they're not going to go away, whether he wins or loses. And so that's very positive.
Go Trump, go! All right. Oh, yeah. Goldie wants to ask a question.
Can you see a new referendum in the UK?
Yeah, there's been calls for a new referendum in the UK to overturn the last one. It's interesting how the left loves democracy until they lose. And then they hate it. But actually they are authoritarian, and they're actually haters of the people's will. And so, yeah, they'll try to get another referendum. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened, but I don't think it will because the majority was too decisive. It wasn't close enough. But I would not be in the least surprised, since it was a non-binding referendum to start with, if nothing really happens. And if Britain does not leave the EU, and some loophole or some excuse is found, or else the process is dragged out so long that it becomes meaningless anyway. That they're going to leave the EU on some sort of a timetable that will take 30 years or something of that kind. But in any case, even there in Britain, those 52% who voted for Brexit are not going away. This is just the beginning. With Trump and with Brexit, with several of the votes that were in Europe, in several European states, in Austria, a candidate very narrowly lost very recently, surprisingly. And he was against the Muslim migrant inundation on the grounds that, the quite correct grounds, that jihadis are embedded among the peaceful migrants and you can't tell one from the other. And so it's a security risk to bring these people in. And he narrowly lost, but it was just recently determined that there had been such extensive voter fraud that the whole election is going to be held again. That the left cheated, they got caught, and now they're going to vote again, which is all to the good. These forces have been unleashed. They're not going away. And they're the forces that are representing what is good and what is true. And so we have every reason, despite how dire things look, to be optimistic.
A following question is, can you see the EU break up, other countries following and to break up, which would be a blessing, of course?
Yes, it would be a great blessing if the EU broke up, and I do think it will. That there have been calls right after the Brexit vote. There were calls in Italy, in the Netherlands, in Denmark, I believe, several other states, for referenda there to see about leaving the EU. And I think the EU is going to collapse under the weight of its own authoritarianism and the oppression that it brings to the people of Europe. It's not going to stand.
I have three questions. Number one, are you aware of the within the European Union of the Visegrad Group, composed of Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovak Republic, and Poland? And the main thing is not to allow Muslim immigration, and powers to be in Brussels are pummeling them, especially they pummeling Hungary. So that's number one question.
I'm not aware of the details. I'm aware of the fact that those countries listed are against the Muslim migrant invasion. People might have trouble with this, so I did want to say that. What I mean is I'm not aware of the details of the arrangement, but I know that they're opposed, and that's all to the good, and I think there are going to be more countries that are opposed. But look, people don't know. In February 2015, ISIS, the Islamic State, said that they were going to inundate Europe with 500,000 refugees. Now, they did not just mean that they were going to send refugees that would create a humanitarian crisis that would lead to the collapse of the European welfare states, although that was part of the deal, part of their plan. They also meant to bring jihadis into Europe among the refugees. In November, jihad terrorists killed 130 people in Paris. 2 of them had just come into Europe via Greece in October as refugees. The San Bernardino killer, Tashfeen Malik, who killed 14 people at a Christmas party last December 2nd, she had passed 5 separate background checks from 5 different U.S. government agencies, which shows that these refugees cannot be properly vetted. The Islamic State, or ISIS, tells the refugees, do not carry a Quran, do not go to mosque, don't wear a beard, don't look as if in any way that would attract attention. Appear to be a secular, westernized Muslim, and then when the time comes to strike, we'll call upon you. You can't vet for somebody like that. There's no way. And so the refugees are a stalking horse for the jihadis. There are peaceful refugees, but the jihadis cannot be separated from among them. The Saudis and the Gulf states have taken 0 refugees. Why? They say, well, there are terrorists among them. They can say that. We can't say that. If we say that, we're racist, bigoted Islamophobes. And so the Central European states that you enumerated, they have exactly the right idea. They're looking out for the security of their own people, as our rulers ought to be doing. And I think that there will be many other countries that will be following them in the near future.
And number two question has to do with recent elections in Europe. Are you aware that there were municipal elections in Italy? And fairly recently, within a week or so, the mayor of Rome, and I think the other city was Turin, they were again outside of the so-called established elite parties, and their platform was no Muslim immigration. So the mayor of Turin and Rome is of that group, new group.
That's very good news, and it's just an indication of everything that I've been saying here. What we have now is a race. Is Europe going to be so overwhelmed with Muslim migrants, including jihad terrorists, that it is destroyed, or will the forces that are opposing all this be able to stop it in time? And right now it's anybody's guess, but there is a significant force right now fighting for freedom and for the human rights of the Europeans, and that's going to grow. As far as the genuine humanitarian crisis that may be posed by that some of these Muslim migrants may be suffering, the Saudis have the pilgrimage to Mecca. It's one of the pillars of Islam. Every Muslim has to go once in his or her lifetime. And they have tens of thousands of tents, air-conditioned tents. They're nice. They're like little hotel rooms outside Mecca that are unused because you can only go on the pilgrimage 10 days a year, the first 10 days of the month Zulhijjah. So the rest of the year, those tents are empty. Perfect place to put the refugees. And the Saudis can make up for spreading their virulent and violent understanding of Islam around the world, spending billions to spread Wahhabi Islam around the world. They can make up for it by putting these refugees in these tents in Mecca. I think it would be a tremendous show of goodwill for the world. And we should be calling this, they are air-conditioned, we should be calling upon the Saudis now to settle those refugees there.
Thank you. And my third and last question has to do with the origins, the beginnings of Islam, specifically with Muhammad in Saudi Arabia. At the time, there was quite a few Jewish tribes in Saudi Arabia, and Muhammad one by one picked them off and destroyed them and did ethnic cleansing. And I forget which one, but one of either Mecca or Medina, one of those two, if not both, were actually populated only by Jewish tribes. Are you aware of that?
Actually, Medina is the city you're thinking of. It was not populated solely by Jewish tribes because there were also some pagan Arabs who adopted Islam and invited Muhammad to come live there, which is where the troubles began. But the three Jewish tribes, the Kainuka, Qurayza, and Nadir, they were very powerful in Medina at the time that Muhammad settled there around the year 622. And he exiled the Kainuka and the Nadir, and they went to settle in an oasis in northern Arabia called Khaybar. And then he decided, it's a long story and I won't bore you with it, but he decided that the Qurayza had betrayed him, and he had them line up along a trench that was outside Mecca for a battle, Medina, and he beheaded between 600 and 900 of the Jewish men of the Qurayza tribe. This is in the earliest biography of Muhammad by Ibn Ishaq, a pious Muslim. It is not a story invented by Muhammad's enemies or something of that kind. It is something that is taught in Islamic schools as fact. It is held up as exemplary that Muhammad massacred Jews. Now you notice I told you that he sent the two tribes in exile, and they went to Khaybar, which was an oasis in northern Arabia. And at one point, after he had massacred the Qurayza, in a separate matter, he wanted to enter into an agreement with the pagan Arabs in Mecca, which is where he was originally from, so that he could go back there and make the pilgrimage. Because the Kaaba, the cube-shaped building where they make the pilgrimage, it was there already, and it was a pagan shrine that he Islamized. And he agreed under very unfavorable terms. He made a treaty with the Meccans. The terms were so unfavorable that his followers were very upset with him, and he promised them to mollify them, to placate them. He promised them spoils of war, booty. And he got it by going to Khaybar, surprising the Jews there. They were farmers, and they were walking out to the fields in the morning with their pickaxes and their rakes, and he surprised them and massacred them all. And even to this day, this is a great victory for Islam that is celebrated by Muslims, such that they chant, Khaybar, Khaybar, Ya Yahud, Jaish Muhammad Sayyid, Khaybar, Khaybar, O Jews, the army of Muhammad will return. And I was actually in New York City a few years back when there was a protest, a tremendous, huge Palestinian protest outside the Israeli embassy in New York, the Israeli consulate. And we were counter-protesting. And I heard the Palestinians chanting, Khaybar, Khaybar, Ya Yahud, this genocidal chant saying that the armies of Muhammad will return and massacre all the Jews. And I bet they're chanting it over there as we speak, or will be soon. But this is something that is Islamic sacred history. It is not some twisting or hijacking of Islam by a tiny minority of extremists. Muhammad is, in Islam, the exemplary, the perfect example, the supreme example of conduct. If Muhammad did something, it is good and right to do and to imitate. And Muhammad massacred Jews. So that tells you what the situation is vis-a-vis Israel. It's considered to be an insult to Islam, and the Jews there have to be killed, which is why you hear them also chanting, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That means the Jews will be eradicated from the whole area. There's not going to be peace. And this is an imitation of Muhammad.
Thank you very much. So the Palestinians are on their way down. They're going to be here, so don't leave. Whatever you do, stick around. There's water up here if you want it. Have a drink. Thank you very much, Mr. Spenser. We have one more question, and then Mayor, who, you got to hear the story of Mayor. He was in New York at an Al-Quds rally, missed his flight for some reason, and wound up taking a bus yesterday back from New York to Toronto. Apparently he just got here. He's buzzing around in the crowd there. So I'm not sure if he missed it or if the flight was canceled. Maybe he'll tell us the truth. But one last question, and then Mayor. And then Mayor's going to talk just before this group gets down here. And then at that point, I want everybody to come up and grab a placard, because we definitely want to show some strength here. And I'm not sure how long the Palestinians will stay in the park before they actually start their march down to the American Embassy, which is about a half a mile, or about 500 meters or so down on University, okay? So one last question here, and then Mayor is going to speak. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, Mr. Spenser is going to be here. He's going to be wandering around, so you can talk to him on a one-on-one. And I really, really appreciate your time. Sir, it's a pleasure. Always a pleasure. So enlightening. Okay, so we have one more question.
Thank you, Mr. Spenser. First of all, thank you for coming to speak to us. I'm wondering about your opinion of where Canada's going with Justin Trudeau opening the immigration doors.
With Justin Trudeau opening the immigration doors, I was just thinking that, I had 3 hours in the Toronto airport a couple times ago when I was trying to get in, that I'm somebody they're very suspicious of coming in, but jihadis, sure. The thing is, the immigration, in all seriousness, unfortunately, is only inviting jihad terror into Canada. And this is because of everything I've been saying. You cannot separate the jihadis from the peaceful Muslims. You cannot distinguish the one from the other. There is absolutely no distinguishing characteristic. And so he has not had any concern for that. And that's only going to cause trouble in the future. There is just no way that that can be avoided.